Hello, thank you for listening. This is the near death experience of Sharon, and this experience occurred on November 3rd, 2016, and was documented on March 14th, 2017. So, not very long at all. Open quote. On December 17th, 2017, at 8:45 a.m., I had my fourth near death experience. I had been hospitalized for having had a seizure the day before and was on a 24-hour observation. On the morning of the 17th, I had had an adverse reaction to some seizure medication and had stopped breathing. Before anyone had been alerted of my situation, I had fallen asleep in my hospital bed when I felt my spirit rise up out of my body. I went up, through the ceiling, past the roof, into the sky, and up into the vast dark universe. I was wrapped or cocooned within what felt like a warm, soft, thick, black velvet blanket. I could see myself within this cozy wrap as well as outside of myself, and I felt so warm, safe, protected, and deeply loved. There was a presence with me, in me, all around me, yet I couldn't see with my visual eyes who this presence was. Even though I couldn't see, I knew that God was with me. I felt no fear or worry as I was curled in a fetal position within this velvet encasement. It felt as if I was a baby again in my mother's womb. As I hung there suspended, not moving up, down, or sideways, I could see brilliant stars and planets all around me. There was a slight feeling of curiosity and amusement at the twinkling stars, but I realized that I felt more comfortable inside the thick velvety blanket that surrounded me. I had no sense of time. I was there for what seemed like eternity. As I hung there suspended among the stars, it felt as though I was waiting, but for what I do not know. It was quiet, calm, peaceful, and the black velvet was so soft and warm. Then suddenly it felt like a vacuum was sucking me down, pulling me down, back into my body. Then I could hear a lot of noise, and as I opened my eyes, the lights in the room were so bright that my eyes hurt. There were so many people in the room calling my name and talking that I thought my ears would explode. The pain was horrendous. I was so confused. I had no idea what had just happened. The doctor stood by my bed while several nurses milled around the room, and then I saw my husband, who looked so terrified, standing over by the door. I had several IVs in my arms and a non-breather oxygen mask on my face. The nurses stayed by my side for quite a while to monitor my breathing. It wasn't until later that I was told how serious it had gotten. I had died from something called acute respiratory acidosis or hypoventilation. Every experience is different, and this experience was certainly different from any of the other experience I've had before. Although I'm still trying to make sense out of it all and to integrate it into my life, I have come to a few conclusions. I feel in my soul that because I have had a fear of the void, God was showing me that the void was not a place to be feared. He was that loving presence that was with me, in me, all around me. God was holding me. Also, I have been struggling lately with depression because of health issues, family issues, and feeling horribly overwhelmed. I feel deeply in my soul that I was put in this loving, holding place to allow my soul to rest. I knew I had a decision to make about whether to stay or go. If God just didn't hold me for a while, I would have made a hasty decision. It was November 3rd, 2016. I had spent several hours in the hospital emergency room in excruciating pain and nausea due to a bowel obstruction caused by adhesions strangling the small intestine. After several tests, the surgeon scheduled emergency surgery to be done immediately. Within the hour, I was in the operating room. During the surgery, my soul left my body and floated above the operating room. I could see the doctors and nurses working on me. This lasted what seemed like only a matter of a minute or two. All of a sudden, I was surrounded by a beautiful rainbow-colored light. I began to feel as though I was moving very rapidly through this light. Then I found myself standing in heaven. I recognized heaven because I saw everything from having been there in a previous NDE. Only this time, I was standing next to the golden wall that surrounded the glorious city. The wall was extremely high, very solid, and made of the purest gold. I felt such a sense of pure love and peace, which completely filled every pore in my body. There was a feeling of pure bliss. I felt a sense of complete awe as I stood there, only a feet from the entrance to the city. I could hear what sounded like a celebration or party going on just beyond the city walls. The air was pure and clean, crisp and sweet. It was filled with the fragrance of wildflowers that danced in the warm, silken breeze that touched my skin. The colors were rich and vibrant. The sky was of the bluest blue and reminded me of a gorgeous spring day. There was a beautiful light that lit up the sky. The light was as brilliant as the sun, yet there was no sun in the sky, and the light illuminated everything, giving off a beautiful golden glow. I knew that the light came from the heart of God. As I stood next to the golden wall, I saw a magnificent, lush, green meadow filled with wildflowers of every color. The wildflowers were colored in rich, vibrant pinks, purples, yellows, reds, violets, and blues. They dotted the field in front of me that stretched from the garden where I had been in my previous near-death experience. This was toward the city, and where I now stood. I saw an old fieldstone wall with pink roses growing up and over the wall, which stood halfway between the garden and the golden city. As I stood there next to the magnificent golden wall, a tiny brown and white beagle puppy wiggled at my feet, demanding my attention. As I leaned down to pet him, he barked and wiggled all over with such joy, while allowing me to rub his soft little tummy. As I continued to rub his puppy belly and play with him, I looked up and saw hundreds of people pouring out of the beautiful garden and begin walking through the tall grass and wildflowers of the meadow. Each person that I saw had an angel walking with them. The angels were taller, dressed in light blue and white-colored robes, and they were much more illuminated than the people. The people walking with their angels were laughing and talking among themselves happily. As I stood there, I could clearly hear everyone's conversations. There were people from all walks of life, men, women, and children of all races and ages. As the people passed me and began entering the city, 2 men walked into my view. The younger of the 2 I had recognized immediately from pictures that I had seen. These pictures belonged to his mother, who had been a friend of mine. He had died some years before. This younger man was accompanying an older gentleman who I had recognized as his father. As the 2 men passed by me, I smiled at them and said, "I know you." They both smiled at me and continued walking toward the entrance to the glorious city. I have no idea how long this procession took place, as time seemed to no longer exist. Standing there, divine love seemed to fill every pore in my body. I was given infused knowledge that I had to come back, that it wasn't my time yet, and I was to let this man's wife know that he and his son were together and that he was okay. I saw a beautiful building made of the finest alabaster with columns and archways. The floor was marble and polished to a glass-like shine. There were 2 huge ornate doors, one at the front and one at the rear of the building. An angel stood at each door, and each one held keys. No one could enter unless the angels allowed you entry by unlocking the door using these special keys. The angels wore ivory robes with gold sashes going from one shoulder to their waist. I was permitted inside the door, and once inside, I saw that there was nothing inside this huge room but a large podium, and sitting on this grand stand was a huge golden book. As I walked up to the stand and looked at the book itself was made of the purest gold and seemed to illuminate the entire room with a golden glow. The paper inside was made of a material I had never seen before. It was not ordinary paper, but rather more of a tightly woven cloth. The book was a living book. It seemed to have life pouring from every fiber of its being. The book was open, but to whose page I do not know. The writing was in gold, and it was in a language I had never seen before. It looked to be some kind of symbol, some kind of ancient script. The angel who gave me entrance was with me, still holding his key, but did not speak. He just stared ahead, keeping watch as I searched for the meaning of the ancient words written down before me. Since there were no answers forthcoming, the only thing I could conclude was the book was not open to the page of my life. Therefore, I could not read the words. When it was time for me to leave, the angel escorted me from the holy room and out into the courtyard of the building. He said only a few words, quote, "To read from the book of life is a gift," end quote. The angel then took his leave, returning to his post at the entrance door. At the time, I was infused by this divine knowledge that using pendulums and computer programs and cards is not how you properly read the holy book. You have to read it from the heart. Upon entering my body, I awoke, still hooked to several machines with the nurses standing next to my bedside. Later that day, when I was well enough to be taken to my room, I had received a message from another friend. She told me that the woman whose son had passed some time ago had lost her husband that day while I was in surgery. I was not surprised, as those were the two men I had seen while standing at the Golden Wall that day. End quote. Wow. What an experience, Sharon. Thank you. I thought that your descriptions were magnificent. And the velvety blanket that held you in the void, I could almost feel that. And the presence with you, and then standing next to the Golden Wall with the meadow, and then being shown the husband and the son for a reason. It's totally amazing. There are some questions here. Question: at what time during the experience were you at your highest level of consciousness? Answer: once I passed through the rainbow light and stood next to the golden wall of the city of heaven. Question: comparing your hearing. Answer: there were hundreds of people pouring out of the garden and walking toward the city. I could hear each person's conversation as well as I could hear various activities taking place within the city walls. Question: did you seem to be aware of things going on elsewhere? Answer: yes, and the facts have been checked out. 2 confirmations came from this NDE, both of which I had no knowledge of prior to my experience, and both were checked out and confirmed. I wasn't sure about the puppy until I told my daughter about my experience. She began telling me about how they had called the police on a neighbor because he was beating a beagle puppy to death. I was absolutely stunned when she told me this. This was the puppy from my NDE. So if there was ever any question as to whether our pets go to heaven, they most certainly do. I'm so happy to say. When I told my friend about her son and husband being together, she was grateful and thankful. It was helpful in her grieving. Amazing. Question: Did you encounter or become aware of any deceased or alive beings? Answer: yes. As the people passed me and began entering the city, two men walked into my view. The younger of the two I had recognized immediately from pictures I had seen. These pictures belonged to his mother, who had been a friend of mine. He had died some years before. This younger man was accompanying an older gentleman who I recognized as his father. As the two men passed by me, I smiled at them and said, "I know you." They both smiled at me and continued walking toward the entrance to the glorious city. I have no idea how long this procession took place, as time seemed to no longer exist. And I think a lot of that was from the story, and maybe it was cut and pasted. But question, did you see an unearthly light? Answer, yes. There was something that resembled the sun, but clearly wasn't. The light was coming from the heart of God, as everything in heaven is illuminated by God's light. Question, did you seem to enter some other unearthly world? Answer, I was standing at a huge, pure golden wall that surrounded a golden city. There were many buildings inside the city walls, with a large building in the center with a golden dome. Outside the city, there was a beautiful garden with gorgeous flowers of rich, vibrant colors. They were in between the garden and the city, and the city was a lush green meadow filled with wildflowers. Question, what emotions did you feel during the experience? Answer, I was in complete and total awe. I felt such divine love and joy beyond words and incredible peace. Question, what importance did religion play in your life before the experience? Answer, greatly important. Question, what's your religion prior to your experience? Answer, Christian Catholic. I am Catholic, more spiritual than religious. Question, have your religious practices changed since your experience? Answer, no. Question, what importance do you place on your religious/spiritual life after your experience? Answer, greatly important to me. Same religion. Question, did your experience include features consistent with your earthly beliefs? Answer, content that was entirely consistent with the beliefs you had at the time of your experience. Question, did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence or hear an unidentifiable voice? Question, I saw hundreds of angels walking from the garden toward the golden city. Question, during your experience, did you gain special knowledge or information about your purpose? Answer, yes. Divine love seemed to fill every pore in my body, and I was given infused knowledge that I had to come back, that it wasn't my time yet, and I was to let this man's wife know that he and his son were together and that he was okay. Question, do you believe in an afterlife after your experience? Answer, an afterlife definitely exists. Yes, the young man who had passed away some time ago as a young teenager was there to greet his father. He had grown and matured since his passing. He looked to be in his 20s. Question, was the experience difficult to express in words? Answer, yes. It has taken 4 months for me to be able to verbalize and begin to integrate what happened that day. Question, how accurately do you remember the experience? Answer, more accurately than other events. Question, do you have any psychic, non-ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before the experience? Answer, yes. I still have the same gifts that I had previously. They are just more heightened. Question, what do you believe about the reality of your experience? Answer, at first, I was in shock that it happened again. I needed time to adjust. I knew that I had died and gone back to heaven, but I couldn't even put the experience into words. It has been a little over 4 months now, so I've had some time to adjust to having had another experience. End quote. End questions. And amazing Sharon. Thank you. And thank you for listening. I hope everybody has a great day.